Welcome friends to SnoozyTor, the place where history and storytelling meet to carry you gently into sleep. Here we bring to life forgotten worlds, voices of the past, and journeys through time, told in a way that soothes, fascinates, and lulls you into rest. Tonight, we begin a powerful story, the life of a German soldier in World War I. Imagine waking up in 1914, the smell of leather boots and wool uniforms filling the air, the excitement of a nation convinced the war would be over by Christmas. From the muddy trenches to the quiet moments of humanity, from the horror of gas attacks to the fragile hope of peace, this is not just a story of battles. It's a story of survival, of love, and of what it means to rebuild after everything is lost. So find a comfortable spot, let your breathing slow, and allow the past to guide you towards sleep. This is SnoozyTor, and tonight, history is your lullaby.
The first thing you notice is the smell. Not the sweet scent of home, of bread baking in your mother's oven, or the earthy aroma of fields after rain, but the thick, heavy odor of wool, leather, sweat, and too many men packed into too small a space. Your eyes open slowly to dim light, filtering through narrow barracks windows. The ceiling beams above you creak as men shift on their straw mattresses. For a moment, you are disoriented. Then you sit up, and it all feels disturbingly familiar. The mattress beneath you is thin and crackling with straw, the wool blanket rough against your skin. Around you, dozens of men are already stirring, some half-dressed, some pulling on gray-green uniforms, their voices a low rumble that grows louder with each passing moment. Somewhere nearby, a bell clangs, harsh and metallic. The sound jolts men into motion. Boots stomp against wooden floors. Orders are barked. The energy is contagious. You feel yourself swept up in it, moving as though you have done this 100 times before. Schnell, Schnell, someone shouts. Quick, quick. You stand and find yourself reaching automatically for a uniform laid neatly at the foot of your bed. The fabric is scratchy, dyed in the standard Feldgrau, field gray, that is supposed to blend with both forest and mud. You pull the tunic over your head, button it tight at the neck, and strap on a belt with pouches. A simple field cap rests on the bed frame, not the famous spiked pickelhaube yet. That's for dress parades, not war. Your boots are stiff leather, but oddly, they fit perfectly. Worn and just for you. It is August 1914. The Kaiser has declared war. Excitement buzzes through the room. Men laugh, slap each other on the back, boast about how quickly it will all be over. We'll be in Paris by Christmas. One of them grins, his voice rising above the chatter. His name, though you can't explain how you know it, is Heinrich. He is broad-shouldered, with sharp cheekbones and eyes that gleam with confidence. The French will run the moment they see us. You nod, but something in your gut twists. Perhaps it is because you know what he does not. This war will last years, not months, and will swallow millions. Or perhaps it is just the hunger gnawing at your stomach. Breakfast is little more than dark bread and a steaming mug of ersatz coffee, a bitter grain substitute that tastes more like dirt than comfort. You force it down anyway. Outside, the summer morning is bright and warm. The streets are alive with energy. As your regiment forms ranks, civilians gather to cheer. Women throw flowers. Children wave paper flags. Old men salute proudly, chest swelling with memories of their own service. The crowd chants the Kaiser's name. You are caught in the tide of gray uniforms marching toward the station. Brass bands play. Patriotic songs fill the air. For the men beside you, it feels like a parade. For you, it feels like the beginning of something you cannot escape. On the train westward, the mood is festive. Men sing, play cards, and write letters home, promising quick victories. Heinrich sits across from you, whittling at a piece of wood with his bayonet, humming under his breath. At one point, he looks up and says, "France and Russia plan to strike us. We're just striking first. It's the only way." You nod again, because what else is there to do? Every man on this train believes it. To doubt aloud would be to invite suspicion, even anger. Night falls. The rhythm of the train is hypnotic, the clatter of wheels on rails mingling with snores and laughter. Through the window, you see fields rolling past, villages sleeping under the summer moon. Somewhere in your chest, your heart beats faster. The reality of it presses in. You are not heading to a game or a festival. You are heading to war. The next morning, you disembark into a town near the Belgian border. The air smells different here, richer, fresher, but already tinged with smoke. The officers shout orders. Packs are hoisted, rifles slung. The weight of your equipment feels enormous, but your body knows how to carry it. Around your waist, pouches hold 120 rounds for your Mauser rifle. A bread bag dangles at your side, containing your rations, soap, and a few personal items. A canteen clinks against your hip. At your belt, the bayonet gleams, a thick, brutal blade meant for close combat. The march begins. Kilometers of road stretch ahead. The sun climbs high, making sweat soak through your uniform. The leather of your boots rubs your heels raw until blisters form. Still, you march. The men around you sing to keep the rhythm. Deutschland, Deutschland über alles. Their voices rise in unison, carrying far across the fields. Farmers stop their work to watch. Some cheer. Others stand silently, arms crossed, their faces unreadable. By evening, the regiment halts in a small village. The streets are lined with nervous civilians. Some open windows, just enough to peek out, their eyes wary. Others shut their doors tightly. A rumor runs down the line that Belgian snipers hide among the population. Every shadow feels dangerous. Tension grips your gut. This is no parade anymore. That night, you sleep in a barn, the straw softer than the barracks, but itching against your skin. Outside, the air is heavy with silence. You hear men whispering in the dark, voices low with bravado, but beneath it, a tremor of unease. You close your eyes, clutching your rifle close, its weighted grim reassurance. Tomorrow will bring something new, something none of you can fully imagine yet. The war has begun.
The sun rises pale over the Belgian countryside as your regiment marches westward, boots pounding in unison on narrow dirt roads. The festive mood from the train rides is fading, replaced by the heavy rhythm of endless marching. Dust rises in clouds, coating your tongue, stinging your eyes. The straps of your pack dig into your shoulders, the Mauser rifle bouncing against your back with every step. At first, the villages you pass through are quiet, almost too quiet. Windows are shuttered, doors barred. Occasionally, you catch the pale face of a child pressed against the glass, wide eyes following the column of German soldiers tramping past. Some villagers stand stiffly at the roadside, neither cheering nor resisting, their silence sharper than any words. Others glare openly, lips tight, fists clenched. The air is thick with tension, as though at any moment the civilians themselves might rise against you. Rumors run through the ranks like wildfire. Belgian franksterers, irregular fighters, have been attacking patrols. Soldiers whisper about comrades ambushed in alleyways, shot from behind hedges, poisoned at village wells. No one knows what is true and what is hysteria, but the effect is the same. Every face you see feels like a potential enemy. Fingers twitch near triggers. Conversations grow terse, suspicious. The easy camaraderie of the barracks has been replaced with grim watchfulness. In one town, your regiment halts to rest. The villagers are herded into the square under watchful eyes. An officer shouts orders. The soldiers spread out, searching houses for weapons or signs of resistance. You are assigned to guard duty at the edge of the crowd. The civilians murmur softly, a mixture of prayers and curses. An old man catches your eye, his gaze unflinching, filled with contempt. You look away, but the image burns in your mind. This is not the glorious march the Kaiser promised. This is occupation. As the column moves on, the signs of war grow more visible. A church smolders on the horizon, its steeple collapsed. Farmhouses lie abandoned, doors swinging open, animals wandering freely in the fields. The road is littered with broken carts, overturned wagons, the possessions of people who fled in haste. In one village, the air stinks of smoke and charred wood. You march past blackened ruins where homes once stood. A child's toy lies in the rubble, half burned. Men glance at it, then march on, eyes forward. No one speaks. By afternoon, the mood shifts again as Belgian resistance stiffens. From distant hills, artillery thunders. Shells scream overhead, exploding in fields nearby, showering dirt and shrapnel. Your regiment takes cover in a ditch, the ground trembling with each impact. The first real casualties come here, men caught in the open, torn apart by fragments. Their screams pierce the haze of smoke. Medics rush forward, dragging the wounded back, but for some it's already too late. The sight is sobering. Yesterday these men laughed and boasted. Today their bodies lie broken on foreign soil. When the shelling stops, orders come to advance again. You cross into another village, this one fiercely defended. Belgian soldiers fire from windows, from hedges, from behind stone walls. Bullets snap through the air, striking men in the column. You dive for cover, heart hammering, ears ringing with the sudden eruption of combat. Training takes over, drop prone, load, aim, fire. Your rifle kicks against your shoulder, the sound of the shot swallowed in the cacophony of battle. Smoke and dust blur your vision, figures moving like shadows in the chaos. Hours pass in a blur of gunfire and shouting. When the fighting subsides, the village is yours. Or what is left of it. Bodies, soldiers and civilians alike, lie twisted in the streets. Houses burn unchecked, flames devouring roofs and walls. The acrid smell of smoke and blood fills your lungs. The officers bark orders to keep moving, to press westward toward France. No time to linger, no time to process. The war drives you forward relentlessly. That night, your company bivouacs in the ruins of a farmhouse. The walls are cracked, the roof partially collapsed, but it offers shelter from the chill air. You sit with Heinrich and a few others around a small fire, eating hard bread and sausage from your packs. The men are quieter now, their jokes edged with unease. Heinrich stares into the flames, his usual grin gone. They said it would be easy, he mutters, that we'd march straight through to Paris. But the Belgians fight like devils. No one disagrees. The bravado of the barracks feels far away. The war is no longer an adventure. It is real, with all its fear and uncertainty pressing down on you. You lie down on the hard floor, wrapping your blanket around your shoulders. The distant rumble of artillery continues through the night, a reminder that tomorrow will bring more marching, more fighting, more death. Sleep comes fitfully, broken by dreams of burning houses and accusing eyes staring from the darkness. The march through Belgium has only begun, and already it is nothing like the dream of glory you were promised. The morning begins like any other on campaign. Marching boots, shouted orders, the clink of gear and rifles. But as the sun climbs higher, the column slows, then halts. A strange silence settles over the countryside. Birds scatter from the trees. Somewhere in the distance, artillery thunders, deeper and closer than before. The whispers pass down the line. Contact ahead. Your heart beats faster as the order comes. Rifles ready. Spread out. The company fans across a narrow road bordered by hedges and farmland. The air is tense, brittle, like glass about to shatter. You check your equipment with shaking hands, cartridges in the pouch, bayonet at the hip, rifle bolt sliding smooth. Around you, men do the same, each lost in his own private ritual of preparation. Then it begins. The crack of rifle fire erupts ahead, sharp and startling. Bullets snap past your ears, smacking into dirt and wood with vicious speed. Deckung, the sergeant shouts, take cover. You dive into the ditch along the road, heart hammering, mouth dry. The Mauser feels heavy in your hands, but also steady, like an extension of your body. You raise it, aim toward the flashes in the distance, and fire. The recoil slams into your shoulder. The smoke burns your nostrils. You work the bolt, fire again and again. Shapes move among the hedgerows ahead. Belgian soldiers, maybe French, it's hard to tell in the chaos. Training takes over. Aim, squeeze, cycle the bolt. The rhythm becomes mechanical, almost detached, even as your ears ring from the deafening crash of gunfire. Around you, men scream. One collapses into the ditch, clutching his throat, blood pumping between his fingers. Another staggers upright and falls, rifle tumbling from his grasp. You force yourself not to look, not to think, just to fire. The noise is overwhelming. Rifles cracking, machine guns chattering, artillery shrieking overhead. Shells explode nearby, sending fountains of earth and shrapnel into the sky. Dirt rains down on you, stinging your skin, filling your mouth with grit. The ground trembles as though the very earth is recoiling from the violence. Beside you, Heinrich curses loudly, then lets out a cry of pain. You turn to see him clutching his leg, crimson spreading across his trousers. Instinct takes over. Dropping your rifle, you grab him under the arms and drag him deeper into cover. He bites down on his lip, teeth clenched against the pain. "Keep firing," he gasps, shoving you back toward your rifle. You nod, forcing yourself to obey, though the image of his bloodied leg burns in your vision. Hours blur into a haze of smoke, noise, and exhaustion. The battle ebbs and flows. Push forward, fall back, push again. Time loses meaning. The sun arcs across the sky unseen, hidden by smoke and the thunder of shells. You fire until your shoulder aches, reload until your fingers are raw. At times, the enemy is close enough that you see their faces, pale and strained, before they vanish behind cover or collapse in the dirt. At last, as evening falls, the gunfire slackens. The Belgians retreat, slipping back through the fields and woods. Silence creeps in gradually, broken only by the groans of the wounded and the crackle of fires consuming shattered buildings. The battlefield is a nightmare, bodies scattered among the churned earth, rifles abandoned, smoke rising from smoldering thatch. Exhausted, you slump against the wall of a ruined farmhouse, rifle across your knees. Your hands tremble, not from cold, but from adrenaline finally draining away. Around you, the survivors gather, faces pale, eyes wide. Some light cigarettes with shaking fingers. Others sit silently, staring at nothing. The bravado of the morning is gone, replaced by something harder, quieter. You look at Heinrich, who lies on a stretcher, pale but alive. He gives you a faint nod of gratitude, his usual grin nowhere to be found. His blood stains your uniform, a reminder of how close you came to losing him. That night, your company sleeps in the abandoned farmhouse. Too tired to remove your boots, you collapse on the floorboards. Outside, the night is eerily calm, the silence punctuated only by the occasional distant boom of artillery. You close your eyes, but rest does not come easily. Each time you drift towards sleep, the screams and explosions return in your mind, jerking you awake. It is your first true taste of battle, and it has stripped away the illusions of glory. The war is real now, and it is nothing like what was promised. The weeks that follow blur into a haze of marching, skirmishing, and exhaustion. The Schlieffen Plan, the grand strategy drilled into every officer and whispered in every barracks, promised a swift strike through Belgium, a sweeping march into France, and the capture of Paris before autumn leaves turned. At first, the plan seems unstoppable. The German army pushes westward relentlessly, mile after mile, village after village, the tricolor flags of France pulled down and replaced with the black, white, and red of the Reich. But then the advance begins to falter. The countryside is no longer empty fields and frightened villagers. French troops stiffen their defense, bolstered by unexpected British reinforcements. Railways carry Allied soldiers to the front faster than anticipated. The Belgian resistance delayed the timetable, and every delay is costly. What was meant to be a clean sweep now feels like slogging through mud, even when the ground is dry. You march until your feet blister and bleed, the leather of your boots cutting into your skin despite layers of rags and socks. The pack on your back digs into your shoulders, leaving deep red welts. Food grows scarcer with each passing day. Once you had sausage, bread, and even the occasional beer. Now rations are thin, hardtack biscuits, watery soup, whatever can be scavenged from abandoned farms. Hunger gnaws constantly, an ache in your belly that never quite goes away. Then comes the Marne. September 1914. Your regiment is ordered south toward the river, part of the great push intended to encircle Paris. The march is endless, but the excitement returns briefly as officers promise final victory is near. Paris lies just beyond the horizon. Some men joke about drinking wine beneath the Eiffel Tower before the month is out. Even Heinrich, limping from his still healing leg wound, grins at the thought. But the reality at the Marne is far different. The Allies have rallied. French and British forces stand firm along the river, their numbers greater than expected, their defenses stronger. What follows is not a quick victory but a brutal clash. 4 days, you are thrown into battle across fields, orchards, and villages. Artillery shakes the ground constantly. Machine guns rake through advancing lines. Each attempt to cross the river is met with fierce resistance. Men fall by the dozens, the hundreds. The ground becomes littered with corpses, the air thick with smoke and the iron tang of blood. One morning, your unit pushes across a small stone bridge under heavy fire. You sprint forward, rifle in hand, bullets snapping past. The man beside you crumples mid-stride, his helmet spinning away. You throw yourself against the low wall, chest heaving, ears ringing. Across the river, French troops shout, their uniforms a blur of blue and red through the smoke. Your sergeant screams for the men to advance, but the push falters. More men fall. The bridge becomes a death trap. Orders shift, fall back, retreat. The word tastes like ash in your mouth. For the first time since the war began, the German army is forced to pull back. Confusion ripples through the ranks. This was not supposed to happen. Paris was almost within reach. Now you stumble backward through the fields you had fought to take only days before, the roar of Allied artillery chasing you. The ground you gained with blood is lost in hours. The retreat is chaotic. Units become scattered, officers shouting conflicting orders. Columns clog narrow roads as men, wagons, artillery, and horses all jostle for space. Exhaustion weighs on every step, every breath. You pass men slumped by the roadside, too tired or wounded to continue, their eyes vacant. Others stagger forward in silence, too shocked to speak. Heinrich limps beside you, his face grim. "It wasn't supposed to be like this," he mutters. You can only nod, too weary to answer. The promise of a swift, glorious war has crumbled into dust. By the time your regiment halts north of the Aisne River, the offensive is over. The German advance has been stopped. Instead of marching into Paris, you are ordered to dig in. Trenches are carved into the earth, shallow at first, just ditches for cover, but soon deeper, reinforced with sandbags and timber. The realization settles heavy on you. This war will not end quickly. That night, you huddle in a rough scrape of dirt, rain dripping from your cap, mud clinging to your boots. The sounds of distant artillery rumble like thunder. Around you, men lie silent, their faces pale in the flickering lamplight. Some stare into the darkness, others clutch rosaries, others simply sleep from sheer exhaustion. The Marne has shattered illusions. There will be no swift victory, no triumphant march through Paris. Instead, there is only the slow, grinding reality of a war that will drag on longer than anyone dared to imagine. You close your eyes, but sleep does not come easily. When it does, your dreams are filled with rivers of blood and endless marching, always marching with no end in sight. The order comes with little ceremony, dig. At first, you don't understand. The war so far has been about marching, attacking, falling back, marching again. The idea of stopping feels almost unnatural. But after the Marne, the German army has shifted its strategy. No more sweeping advances. No triumphant march into Paris. Instead, the command is clear. Hold the ground you've taken. The best way to hold is to go underground. The first trenches are crude, just shallow ditches scratched into the soil with shovels, picks, even bayonets. Men work feverishly, mud clinging to their boots, blisters rising on their hands. The soil is heavy and wet, the air filled with curses and the dull scrape of metal on stone. It feels strange, almost cowardly, to hide in the ground instead of standing tall. But soon you understand why. The first time a French artillery barrage lands on your position, the trench saves your life. Shells scream overhead, exploding in geysers of dirt and fire. The earth shakes, clods of mud rain down, smoke stings your eyes. You huddle low, pressed against the earthen wall, heart hammering. Above, the ground is shredded, trees splintered, men caught in the open torn apart. Down in the trench you live. What begins as a ditch soon becomes a network. Engineers arrive, barking orders, setting standards. Trenches are cut in zigzag patterns, so a single shell cannot wipe out an entire line. Fire steps are carved, allowing men to peer and shoot over the parapet. Sandbags reinforce the walls. Timber planks shore up collapsing sides. Communication trenches branch backward, connecting front lines to supply depots, aid stations, and reserves. Slowly, the earth transforms into a fortress. Life adjusts to this new existence. Days are spent working, digging deeper, reinforcing walls, laying duckboards to keep feet out of the mud. Nights bring patrols into no man's land, that deadly strip of ground between your trench and the enemy's, littered with barbed wire, craters, and corpses. The fear never leaves you. At any moment, a sniper's bullet could whistle past your ear, or a shell could drop directly into your section. But alongside the fear comes routine. Dawn and dusk are the most dangerous times, so every man stands ready at those hours, rifle in hand, eyes scanning the mist for movement. Midday might bring chores, repairing damage, fetching rations, cleaning weapons. The hours stretch endlessly, boredom gnawing as much as hunger or fear. To pass the time, you write letters home. You describe the weather, ask ask about family, pretend things are better than they are. The truth, that you sleep in mud, that rats crawl across your chest at night, that you hear men sob quietly in the dark, you never put on paper. The trench becomes both prison and shelter. It smells of damp earth, unwashed bodies, human waste, and smoke. Lice infest every seam of your uniform, biting constantly. The itching never stops. Rats, fat from feeding on corpses, scurry boldly through dugouts, gnawing at rations and even at the dead. You grow used to their presence, swatting them away like flies. One evening, as you sit cleaning your rifle by the dim light of a lantern, Heinrich lowers himself beside you. His leg, bound tightly in bandages, is still stiff, but he refuses to be sent home. "I'd rather rot here than explain myself to civilians," he mutters. You nod. It is easier to endure with comrades who understand, who share the same misery. The first trench raids come soon after. French patrols creep across no man's land under cover of darkness, tossing grenades into your line, stabbing with bayonets before melting back into the night. You learn to sleep lightly, ears tuned for alarms, ready to scramble awake at the first shout. Fear sharpens every sense. Still, there are moments that almost feel human. A cigarette passed between friends, a song hummed quietly in the dugout, a letter arriving from home. For a few minutes, the war fades and life feels almost normal. Almost. But always, the reality presses back. A sudden shell, a sniper's crack, the sight of a comrade slumped lifeless in the mud. You realize, with a heaviness that settles deep inside, that this war is not going to end soon. The trenches are not temporary. They are your world now. That night, lying on damp boards beneath a leaking canvas, you stare into the darkness. The distant flashes of artillery light the horizon like silent lightning. The ground beneath you vibrates faintly with each impact miles away. This is the new rhythm of war. Not sweeping marches, not glorious charges, but mud, shovels, waiting, and the endless roar of guns. You close your eyes and in your mind, you can still hear the officer's voice from weeks ago. Dig. And you understand now. The trenches are not just holes in the ground. They are graves waiting to be filled. By October, the shallow ditches you first clawed into the earth have transformed into something far larger, deeper, and more permanent. The German command has decided this war will not be won quickly. Instead of advancing, you will hold. And to hold, you must build. So you dig. The trenches deepen until the walls loom above your head. Duckboards line the bottom to keep you from sinking into mud, though water still seeps through, pooling ankle-deep after every rain. The network expands, with communication trenches snaking backward like arteries. At the front, fire bays and parapets bristle with barbed wire and loopholes for shooting. Behind, dugouts are carved into the sides, reinforced with timber and even poured concrete. Yours is one of the lucky sectors. German trenches are often better than the Allies, deeper, more solid, designed to last. At first, this gives you a grim pride. But as the weeks pass, you realize what it really means. You are not going anywhere. These holes are meant to house men for months, years even. You are not temporary visitors. You are residents of the underworld. Life underground quickly becomes routine. You wake before dawn, fumbling for your helmet and rifle, standing watch on the fire step. Mist curls over no man's land, obscuring the enemy trenches only a few hundred yards away. The air is cold, damp, heavy with the smell of smoke and decay. Every man stares into the fog, straining for the slightest movement. Sometimes nothing happens. Other times, a rifle cracks and someone drops silently, their body sliding into the mud. When stanza ends, the long day begins. There are always chores: repairing collapsed walls, hauling sandbags, laying new wire, pumping water out of the flooded sections. Your hands blister, your back aches, but the work never ends. The trenches are alive in their own way, constantly eroding, collapsing, demanding endless labor to keep them from swallowing you whole. Meals arrive irregularly, carried forward by exhausted ration parties. At first, you eat bread, sausage, potatoes, but soon supplies thin. You make do with watery soups, hard biscuits, tinned meat of questionable origin. Coffee is rare, beer even rarer. Cigarettes become more valuable than coins, traded for favors or saved for long nights when nerves need steadying. The boredom is almost worse than the danger. Hours stretch endlessly with nothing to do but wait. You clean your rifle again and again until it gleams. You play cards with comrades, carving decks from scraps of cardboard. You write letters home, careful letters, leaving out the mud, the rats, the nightmares. Instead, you ask about family, harvests, neighbors, pretending life is normal. But nothing about trench life is normal. Rats the size of cats scurry freely, bold enough to run across your body while you sleep. They feast on corpses half buried in the parapets, their teeth gnawing audibly in the silence. Lice infest every seam of your uniform, biting constantly. The itching never stops, no matter how much you scratch or boil your clothes. Men cough endlessly, hacking up phlegm from lungs choked by damp air and smoke. Dysentery spreads quickly, filling latrines with the stench of sickness. At night, the sky flickers with flares, casting ghostly light over no man's land. Patrols creep out into the darkness, searching for enemy wire, sometimes clashing with allied raiders in brutal hand-to-hand fights. You volunteer once, crawling on your belly through wet grass and cratered ground. The silence presses like a weight. Every breath sounds too loud. You grip your bayonet tight, praying not to stumble across a hidden enemy patrol. When you finally return to the trench, body whole, you feel like you've stolen time itself. Fear never leaves you. Even in moments of stillness, when the guns fall quiet, you feel it coiled inside your chest. A shell could drop at any moment. A sniper could take your head the instant you peek above the parapet. You learn to live with fear, to fold it into your routine until it feels almost ordinary. Still, there are moments of humanity. Heinrich, legs stiff but healing, tells stories of his village back in Bavaria, of festivals, of orchards in bloom, of girls who laughed at his terrible singing. Schmidt, the younger recruit, sketches crude cartoons in the mud, drawing laughter from men too tired to smile otherwise. Sometimes, a letter arrives from home, its paper smudged with your mother's handwriting, and for a moment the war feels far away. But it always returns. One evening, as you huddle in the dugout with a dozen others, a shell lands directly above. The roof shakes, dirt cascades down, lanterns flicker wildly. For a long moment, you think the world is collapsing on top of you. When the dust settles, you are still alive, but the dugout next door is gone. Men crushed, buried, erased in an instant. You sit in silence, heart pounding, realizing how fragile survival truly is. The trenches are more than walls of earth and sandbags. They are coffins stretched across the land, filled with the living, waiting to be claimed. And deep down, you know this is only the beginning. By December 1914, the weather turns cruel. The rains of autumn give way to cold that seeps into your very bones. Frost coats the parapets at dawn, and puddles in the trench bottoms harden into jagged ice before thawing back into mud by afternoon. Every breath becomes a cloud in the air, every step a squelch of wet boots. Your feet never feel warm. The officers warn constantly about trench foot. Wrap them in spare rags, smear grease when you can, keep them dry. But dry is a luxury here. Meals grow worse too. The supply lines strain as the front settles into a stalemate. Instead of sausages and potatoes, you eat thin soup and bread so stale it cracks your teeth. Tobacco, once a daily comfort, now comes irregularly. Men smoke the last butts until the paper burns their lips. Spirits sag. The war, promised to be over by Christmas, shows no sign of ending. Paris is not captured. Instead, you sit shivering in a hole, staring across a barren strip of ground at an enemy just as miserable as you. Then Christmas arrives. On Christmas Eve, the guns fall oddly silent. You stand your usual watch at dusk, scanning the dim outline of the British trenches opposite. The sky is a deep winter blue, the air biting cold. Then you hear it, a faint sound drifting across no man's land. Singing. At first, you think it's a trick of the wind. But then more voices join. The tune is familiar, though the words are English. Silent Night. You glance at Heinrich, who shrugs, listening intently. Slowly, almost shyly, one of your comrades begins singing the German words. Still nacked, Heilig nacked. More voices join until the trench hums with song. For a moment, the war dissolves into music shared between enemies. That night, lanterns flicker along the parapet, and candles are stuck into bayonets or propped on sandbags. Across the lines, you see the faint glow of British candles too. The air feels different, lighter, almost warm despite the frost. No shots are fired. Instead, greetings are shouted awkwardly across the darkness. Merry Christmas, one voice calls. Frohe Weihnachten, someone answers. Laughter ripples through both sides. On Christmas morning, the impossible happens. Men climb cautiously from their trenches, hands raised. At first, you think your officers will stop it, but even they seem caught in the strange spell of the day. Slowly, you clamber over the parapet and walk into no man's land. The ground crunches with frost beneath your boots. Around you, Germans and British alike converge, meeting in the middle where days before bullets tore men apart. You find yourself face to face with a young British soldier, his cheeks red from the cold, a grin spreading across his face. He offers a cigarette. You accept, lighting it with trembling fingers. The smoke tastes like peace. All around, men exchange gifts, chocolate, badges, bread, even a bottle of schnapps pass from hand to hand. Someone kicks a ball into the clearing, and soon a football match erupts, laughter echoing across the scarred landscape. For a few hours there is no war. Just men, weary and frozen, finding joy in the simplest things. You even shake hands with the British lad, his glove rough against your palm. He looks no different from you, just another boy dragged into this madness. The truce doesn't last. By evening, officers reassert control, warning that such fraternization cannot continue. Orders are strict. The war resumes. Reluctantly, you return to your trench, the glow of the day fading into cold darkness. When the guns roar again the next morning, it feels like a betrayal. You shoulder your rifle and fire toward men you shared bread and laughter with only hours before. The absurdity burns inside you, leaving a bitter taste. Yet the memory of Christmas lingers. When nights are hardest, when shells pound endlessly, you think back to that day. The singing, the candles, the brief glimpse of humanity amid the mud and death. It reminds you that beneath the uniforms and orders, you are all the same, frightened young men longing for home. As winter deepens, the frost gives way to snow, blanketing the trenches in white. The cold is merciless, but in its silence you sometimes remember the fragile peace of that Christmas. A peace that proved, if only for a single day, that even in the heart of war, humanity can flicker like a candle in the dark. And then, as the weeks drag on, whispers reach your trench. The High Command is preparing something new, something terrible, to break the stalemate when spring returns. By spring of 1915, the war has settled into a grim stalemate. The trenches stretch for miles across France and Belgium, a scar carved into the earth. Every attempt at breaking through ends the same way: thousands of shells, thousands of dead, and the front line barely moves a few hundred yards. The soldiers joke bitterly that the war will last forever. The commanders, however, search for new ways to shatter the deadlock. One morning, the officers gather the company and issue an ominous warning. "When the wind is right, you will see something new," one says, his voice clipped and stern. "Do not panic. Use your mask. If you remove it, you will die." The men exchange uneasy glances. None of you truly understand, but the words plant a seed of dread. Weeks later, you find out what he meant. April 1915, near Ypres. The day begins like any other, with artillery thundering in the distance and men repairing walls or cleaning rifles. Then, in the late afternoon, you hear a hissing sound from the German lines behind you. At first, you think it's steam escaping from pipes. Then you see it, a greenish-yellow cloud rising, curling, drifting slowly across no man's land toward the French and British trenches. Yes. The men around you stand transfixed, watching the strange, shimmering mist creep closer. At first, it looks almost harmless like fog. But then the shouting begins. Across the field, the enemy trenches erupt in chaos. Soldiers clutch their throats, stumbling blindly, coughing violently. Some collapse, writhing on the ground, their faces turning blue. Others claw at their throats as if trying to tear out the burning inside. The horror is immediate, overwhelming. Your officers bark orders, "Masks on." You fumble for the crude canvas mask issued days earlier. It smells of rubber and chemicals, suffocating, but it seals over your face. The world becomes muffled, your breath loud inside the mask. The lenses fog slightly as you peer out, watching the devastation. The French have no protection. The gas pours into their trenches, filling every corner, sinking into dugouts. Men flee in panic, coughing blood, eyes streaming tears. Entire units dissolve in minutes, leaving the trenches eerily silent. The German line surges forward, stormtroopers racing through the mist with rifles and grenades. The advance is swift, the ground abandoned. But the victory feels hollow. You pass through the captured trench, stepping over bodies twisted in agony. The smell is unbearable, a choking mix of chlorine and death. Men lie with mouths open, eyes wide, frozen in their final moments of suffocation. Some cling to each other as if seeking comfort at the end. The scene etches itself into your memory, too vivid to ever fade. The gap in the Allied line is real, but confusion stalls the advance. The commanders hesitate, supplies lag, and reinforcements arrive too slowly. By the time orders filter through, the enemy has rallied, plugging the breach with reserves. What might have been a decisive breakthrough collapses into yet another stalemate. The gas, terrible as it is, has not ended the war. Soon enough, the Allies respond with gas of their own. Rumors spread quickly. British shells filled with poison, French canisters ready to release. Now the fear cuts both ways. Every breeze becomes suspect, every mist on the horizon a potential killer. The mask becomes as vital as the rifle, kept close at all times. You practice drills endlessly, mask on in 10 seconds or less. Any slower and you won't survive. The mask is a prison of its own. It stinks of chemicals, restricts your breathing, fogs your vision. Wearing it for hours leaves your lungs burning, your skin raw. Yet it is better than the alternative. One evening, a shell lands nearby, bursting with a cloud of gas. You manage to get your mask on just in time, but a man 2 feet away hesitates. He coughs violently, collapses, his hands clawing at his throat. You watch helplessly as his body convulses, then falls still. The gas changes everything. It is no longer just bullets and shells. Now the air itself is a weapon. You sleep uneasily, mask at your side, dreaming of invisible clouds seeping into your lungs. Men whisper that the war has crossed into madness, that no god could bless such tactics. Others argue it's just another tool, no different than shrapnel or bayonets. You don't know what to believe. You only know that every breath might kill you. As spring turns to summer, the gas becomes a constant threat. Cylinders, shells, clouds drifting on the wind, it is everywhere. Survival becomes a matter of discipline and luck. Yet even as you endure, a grim realization takes root. The war is not about to end. Gas or no gas, the trenches remain. The stalemate holds. You look out across no man's land one evening, the sunset painting the sky crimson. The battlefield is quiet, but the silence feels deceptive. You tighten the straps on your mask, fingers trembling slightly. This war, you think, is no longer about winning quickly. It is about surviving another day. The word Verdun begins to circulate through the trenches like a curse. At first, it is just a place on the map, a fortress city in northeastern France. But soon it becomes something else, an abyss into which entire armies are hurled. Your unit is not sent there immediately, but rumors travel fast. Men who return from Verdun speak in hollow voices, eyes vacant, as if they left part of their soul behind. They talk of endless artillery, of skies black with smoke, of hills turned to moonscapes. It's not a battle, one gaunt survivor mutters in the dugout one evening, it's a meat grinder. When your turn finally comes, you march south through fields already scarred by years of fighting. The roads are jammed with wagons, guns, and columns of men. The distant sky flashes constantly, thunder rolling without pause. As you approach Verdun, the ground itself seems to tremble. The French, determined to hold the city at all costs, resist with ferocity. The German command is equally determined to bleed France white, grinding them down through sheer attrition. The result is horror beyond anything you've known. 4 days, you crouch in forward positions under the most relentless bombardment you can imagine. Thousands of shells fall every hour, the earth erupting endlessly. The noise is unbearable, a constant roar that drowns out thought itself. You stuff cotton in your ears, press your hands over your helmet, but nothing helps. The ground shakes as if alive, trenches collapsing, dugouts caving in. Men go mad from the sound, rocking and muttering until they are dragged away. When the artillery pauses, the infantry attacks. You scramble from your trench, stumbling over cratered ground, barbed wire, and the shattered remains of trees. Machine guns rattle from French positions, mowing down lines of men. You throw yourself flat, clawing through mud and corpses alike, firing blindly toward flashes of enemy fire. Around you, men scream, bleed, die. You lose track of time, of days, of even who is winning or losing. Verdun is not about victory. It is about survival. One night, you and Heinrich huddle in a collapsed dugout, sharing a can of watery soup by the light of a guttering candle. His face is thinner now, his grin long gone, replaced by weary eyes that seem far older than his 20-something years. They said this would end the war, he whispers bitterly. End the war by killing us all, maybe? You have no answer. You just sip the soup, the taste of ash and dirt lingering in your mouth. The months grind on. You watch friends vanish in an instant, swallowed by shells. You bury comrades in shallow graves that are soon obliterated by artillery, their bodies lost forever. You sleep in dugouts 12 feet underground, your ears straining for the sound of incoming shells. You wake shaking, convinced you've been buried alive, only to find the roof still intact. You begin to notice strange things, how you can identify shell types by sound, how your body reacts before your mind does, ducking instinctively at the first whistle. Your nerves are raw but sharper too. It feels less like you are living and more like you are surviving on instinct alone. After weeks, your unit is rotated out, your numbers decimated. You limp away from Verdun gaunt, filthy, haunted. The French still hold the city. The front line has barely shifted. The cost, hundreds of thousands of lives on both sides, seems meaningless. Back in a quieter sector, you try to recover, but Verdun lingers in your mind. At night, you dream of endless shell fire, of bodies piled higher than the parapets, of screaming that never stops. The war has become something darker now, stripped of any illusion of honor or glory. It is a machine that devours men, and you are caught in its gears. By the end of 1916, another word spreads through the trenches: Somme. Another meat grinder, this time with the British bearing the brunt. The war of attrition continues. Millions dead, miles gained or lost measured in yards. Verdun has taught you the true nature of this war. Not decisive battles or glorious charges, but endless grinding, where victory is measured by who still has men left to fight. Sitting in your dugout one cold night, you sharpen your bayonet slowly, the sound rasping in the silence. Heinrich watches you and shakes his head. "It will never end," he says. And for the first time you believe he is right. By 1917, the war no longer resembles the one you marched into in 1914. The rifles and bayonets that once seemed the heart of battle now feel almost primitive. The front has become a laboratory of death, each side racing to invent new ways to kill faster, further, and more efficiently. You first noticed the change with the machine guns. At the start of the war, they were terrifying novelties, cutting down charges in minutes. Now they are everywhere, mounted on parapets, hidden in pillboxes, firing so constantly that the very rhythm of the battlefield is their stuttered roar. You've learned to fear the sound of the Maxim gun, its metallic chatter slicing through the air. Attacks that might have worked in 1914 now dissolve instantly under its fire. Then comes the artillery. Always present but never like this. The guns grow larger, louder, more precise. Heavy howitzers hurl shells the size of tree trunks, shaking the ground for miles. You grow accustomed to the whistling arc overhead, instinctively judging whether it will fall near or far. Entire villages vanish under bombardments, reduced to rubble and dust before a single soldier enters. It is artillery, not infantry, that rules the war now. Gas, too, becomes more sophisticated. Chlorine was only the beginning. By 1917, you face phosgene, far deadlier, and mustard gas, which doesn't just suffocate, it burns, blisters, blinds. The masks you once trusted now feel flimsy, outdated. You sleep with it hanging around your neck, always ready. You've seen too many men tear their masks off in panic, clawing at their throats, only to collapse in seconds. The fear of the unseen enemy, the air itself, never leaves you. But the greatest change arrives with something new: tanks. The first time you hear the grinding metal and clanking treads, you think it's artillery wagons. But then, across no man's land, a shape emerges, hulking, armored, crawling over wire and craters. The British have unleashed something monstrous. Bullets ping uselessly off its sides. Men fire rifles, throw grenades, but it keeps coming, spitting fire from its guns. Panic spreads. For the first time, you feel the battlefield itself tilt, the old rules breaking under this new invention. Only artillery shells seem able to stop the beasts, and even then, not always. In response, Germany fields stormtroopers, specialized units trained for speed and infiltration. They move like shadows, slipping through weak points, bypassing strongholds, cutting communication lines. They carry light machine guns, flamethrowers, grenades, tools of close, brutal combat. Watching them work, you realize the war is no longer about massed lines of men advancing shoulder to shoulder. It is about flexibility, shock, and speed. One evening, after a failed British push, you sit in the dugout cleaning your rifle. Heinrich sits across from you, sharpening a trench knife. "This isn't the war we joined," he says quietly. You nod, remembering the bright uniforms, the flags, the promises of a quick victory. Those days are gone. Now you wear steel helmets, carry grenades on your belt, and crouch in concrete bunkers. You look less like soldiers of tradition and more like creatures adapted to survive in a new industrial hell. Even your own body feels different. You move with instinct now, ducking before you hear the shell hitting the ground at the first cough of machine gun fire. Your hands are calloused from shovels, stained with oil from weapons, scarred from burns and cuts. You no longer flinch at the sight of blood, nor pause when stepping over bodies. You have become as much a machine as the weapons you carry. Yet with each advance in technology, with every new weapon unveiled, the result is the same: stalemate. More men die, more ground churns to mud, but the lines barely move. The machine guns cut charges down, the artillery smashes counterattacks, the gas seeps through dugouts, the tanks crawl forward only to be stopped by mines or shells. The war devours innovation as it devours men, swallowing everything into the same endless mud. One night, as you patrol the trench under a moonless sky, you pause to listen. The battlefield hums with machinery, engines, clattering guns, distant explosions. It sounds less like a place for men and more like a factory that manufactures death. You realize with a chill that you are one of its workers, caught in a system far larger than yourself. Still, you shoulder your rifle and keep walking. Because in this new world of machines, the only choice left to you is survival. By 1917, the war feels endless. 3 years of mud, blood, and promises that never come true have eroded whatever illusions you once carried into the trenches. Even the officers look hollow-eyed, their voices hoarse from shouting orders that nobody believes in anymore. The strain is everywhere. Letters from home speak of hunger, of shortages, of families struggling to survive while you waste away at the front. Inflation gnaws at wages and children grow up without fathers. The thought that Germany might not only be fighting the French and British but starving its own people in the process creeps into your mind, though you try to push it aside. Among the men, discontent simmers. Complaints once whispered in the dark of the dugouts now surface more openly. For what? Heinrich mutters one morning as he pulls on his boots, the soles worn thin. For a few yards of mud? For generals who sit miles behind the line eating roast dinners while we eat rats. Others nod grimly. You don't argue because you feel the same. The army cracks begin to show. Some units refuse to go over the top, simply staying in their trenches despite orders. Others mutiny outright, shouting down their officers, even threatening them. In the French army, whole regiments refuse to fight, demanding peace. The Germans, disciplined and proud, resist such extremes at first. But the exhaustion is universal. One evening, a runner brings news: the Russians are collapsing. Revolution has torn through their empire, the Tsar overthrown. For a moment, there is hope, one enemy less to fight. But the relief is short-lived. The Western Front still looms, unbroken, and the Allies grow only stronger as America begins sending troops. Fresh men, well-fed, eager, untouched by years of grinding trench life. The thought chills you. Meanwhile, your own company is a shadow of itself. Disease, desertion, death. Each week the faces around you change. You barely learn new names before they vanish again. Heinrich clings on, his limp worse than before, but his spirit holds steady, if grim. We'll get through, he says, though his eyes betray doubt. Morale hits its lowest during another fruitless assault. You are ordered forward across cratered ground, machine guns rattling before you even leave the trench. Men stumble and fall within seconds. You dive into a shell hole, pressing yourself into the mud as bullets snap overhead. All around you, screams rise and fall. Hours later, you crawl back to your own line, filthy, trembling, alive only by chance. Out of the 100 men who went forward, less than 30 return. Back in the dugout, silence reigns. No songs, no jokes, not even curses. Just silence. The survivors stare into space, hollow-eyed. When the officer appears, barking orders about reinforcing the wire, no one moves. Finally, Schmidt, the young recruit, spits into the dirt and mutters, "To hell with it." The officer stares, furious, but says nothing. He knows. Pushing too hard now might spark something worse. The next days blur together. Work details are done slowly, half-heartedly. Some men slip away at night, deserting into the countryside, gambling that capture is better than another week in the trench. Others simply stop caring, standing recklessly exposed, daring fate to finish them. Death becomes almost a relief rather than a fear. And yet, despite everything, you keep going. Perhaps it's habit. Perhaps it's loyalty to Heinrich and the few comrades left. Perhaps it's simply that you don't know how to stop. You cling to small routines, sharpening your knife, cleaning your rifle, writing a few lines home. These tiny acts of discipline keep you tethered to something, anything resembling order. The generals, desperate to hold the army together, promise new offensives, new weapons, new strategies that will finally bring victory. But you've heard it all before. The men mutter darkly, some even whispering of peace without victory, of laying down arms. Such talk is dangerous, close to treason, but in the weary gloom of the trenches, it feels more like honesty. One rainy afternoon, you and Heinrich sit under a torn canvas, sharing the last of your bread. He looks at you with an expression you've never seen before. Not fear, not anger, but something like resignation. "I don't think we're winning," he says quietly. The words hang heavy in the damp air. For years, hope has been the only thing keeping you upright. Now, even that feels fragile. The army hasn't collapsed yet. Not fully. But you can feel the strain in every silence, every reluctant march, every hollow cheer. Something is breaking, and when it does, you wonder if anything will be left to rebuild. By 1918, the war feels like it has lasted a lifetime. The days and months blur together in an endless cycle of mud, hunger, and fear. What began as a march of proud young men singing patriotic songs on their way to Paris has become a slow grind of survival, each sunrise simply another test of endurance. Your trench, once a crude ditch, is now a sprawling labyrinth. Dugouts stretch deep underground, reinforced with timber and scavenged concrete. Rats still scurry across your boots at night, fat from feeding on corpses in no man's land. Lice still bite at your skin no matter how often you wash your uniform. The smell of rot never leaves, clinging to every breath you take. And yet, somehow, it all feels normal now. You've lived this way so long you can't imagine anything else. The routine dulls the horror but doesn't erase it. Every day brings the same rhythm. Stand to at dawn, reinforce the trench walls, fetch supplies, clean weapons, wait. Always waiting. Then the sudden interruptions, an artillery barrage shaking the ground like an earthquake, a raid across no man's land, the urgent hiss of gas, sending everyone fumbling for masks in the choking dark. You've grown used to the drill, to the way your body moves automatically in moments of danger. Survival is muscle memory now, yet the scale of the suffering grows. Supplies from home arrive thinner and thinner. The blockade has tightened its grip on Germany, and back in Bavaria your family survives on little more than turnip bread and watered-down soups. The letters that reach you are filled with stories of hunger, strikes, even riots. You worry more for them than yourself. Out here, at least, you have rations, even if they are meager and sometimes barely edible. Whispers travel faster than orders in the trenches. Rumors of American soldiers landing in France spread like wildfire. Some say they're inexperienced and soft, that they won't last long. Others say they come in endless waves, well-fed, well-armed, and fresh. You've heard the second version enough to know it's true. The war that once felt winnable now feels like it's slipping away inch by inch. Still, the generals cling to their grand plans. In March 1918, the order comes down, the spring offensive. This is it, the final push to end the war before the Americans arrive in force. Stormtrooper tactics are introduced, small groups infiltrating enemy lines, bypassing strong points, striking deep. You're assigned to such a unit, chosen for your endurance, your experience, your ability to survive where others don't. Training brings a strange excitement, almost like those first days back in 1914. New weapons arrive. Lightweight machine guns, flamethrowers, the MP-18 submachine gun. For a moment, you believe this time might be different. When the offensive begins, it works. The artillery bombardment is shorter, sharper, deadly effective. You and your comrades storm across no man's land, bypassing resistance, capturing trenches with shocking speed. For the first time in years, the front moves. The advance is intoxicating. Villages fall, prisoners march past in droves, and you feel the exhilaration of movement after years of stagnation. But the euphoria doesn't last. By April, the offensive stalls. The British and French retreat, but they don't collapse. Supply lines can't keep up. You're running out of ammunition, out of food, out of energy. Each day of progress costs more lives, and soon you are back to the same reality: mud, blood, and stalemate. Except now the Allies are stronger than ever, bolstered by fresh American divisions arriving in endless numbers. The failure of the offensive crushes morale more than any bombardment ever could. The men had dared to hope again, and that hope is now shattered. "It's finished," Heinrich mutters one night as you share a cigarette in the dugout. His face is gaunt, his limp worse, his hands shaking from cold and exhaustion. You want to argue to tell him he's wrong, but the words won't come. You feel it too. And then the Spanish flu arrives. It sweeps through the trenches faster than any bullet. Men who survived Verdun, the Somme, Passchendaele, men who cheated death a dozen times, are struck down by fever, their lungs filling until they suffocate in their bunks. You catch it too, lying for a week in a haze of heat and shivering cold. Somehow, your body claws its way back from the edge, but thousands aren't so lucky. By autumn, the collapse is undeniable. The Allies advance. German units retreat again and again, leaving behind the land you fought for, the dugouts you built, the comrades buried in shallow graves. At home, revolution breaks out. The Kaiser flees. Rumors swirl of an armistice, of surrender. But at the front, the killing continues, each side still grinding down lives even as peace looms. One gray morning in November, you wake to silence. No artillery. No machine guns. The officers confirm it. The war is over. The armistice has been signed. Relief doesn't come like you imagined it would. Instead, there's numbness. So, you survived, but the cost feels immeasurable. 4 years of your life swallowed by mud and fire, and for what? The long walk home begins. Not as victors, not even as defeated soldiers, but as shadows of yourselves. Germany is broken. The empire is gone. And as you march back toward Bavaria, you wonder what kind of world is left waiting for you. The silence after November 11th feels heavier than any bombardment. For 4 years, the world has been defined by sound. Rifles cracking, shells screaming, men shouting, dying, praying. Now, the stillness is unnatural, almost unbearable. You sit in the trench, your rifle across your knees, staring at a sky free of smoke for the first time in years. Around you, men shuffle aimlessly. Some laugh in disbelief, others cry openly, many just sit like you, hollow-eyed, unable to process what it means. The war is over. But what is left of you? Orders come quickly: dismantle, pack up, prepare to withdraw. No victory marches, no triumphant flags. You are to leave the front as quietly as possible, a defeated army slipping back into a country it no longer recognizes. The officers read the terms of the armistice: withdrawal from occupied lands, surrender of weapons, reparations. Words that sound distant, like they belong to another world. All you know is that tomorrow you will walk east, away from France, toward home. The journey is long and chaotic. Railways are shattered, bridges destroyed, towns burned. Entire units dissolve along the way. Men peel off to find their villages, their families. Some throw away their uniforms, preferring to look like civilians rather than soldiers of a defeated empire. You cling to your small group, Heinrich with his limp, Schmidt quieter than ever, a handful of others who somehow survived the 4-year storm. The bond is unspoken but unbreakable. You march together not because of orders, but because without one another you would feel lost in the silence. As you pass through Belgium, the looks you receive from civilians are colder than any winter wind. Hatred burns in their eyes, hatred for the invaders who brought fire and death to their homes. Children throw stones. Women spit. Old men glare. You keep your head down, your rifle strapped to your back, but the shame presses on you like another pack. Once you believed you were defending Germany. Now you wonder if you were just part of a long chain of destruction that swallowed Europe whole. Crossing into Germany brings little relief. The homeland you dreamed of in the trenches is not the same. Villages are quieter, poorer. Fields lie untended. The blockade has starved the population, and the war has drained them of hope. People stare as you march through, some with pity, others with resentment. You expected cheering crowds, but instead you find silence, as if they do not know what to make of you. Hero? Victim? Symbol of a defeat they cannot bear to face? In Bavaria, rumors fly faster than facts. The Kaiser has abdicated. A republic has been declared. Workers' council seized power in some cities. Revolution is everywhere. Flags change from black, white, red to red banners of socialism. No one seems in control. The empire you fought to defend has vanished in the weeks you were marching home. One night, sheltering in a barn, you sit with Heinrich. The hay is softer than anything you've slept on in months, but neither of you can rest. "What now?" he asks. His voice is quiet, almost childlike. You don't know how to answer. You think of your parents, your fiancée Maria, your brothers. One dead, one missing, one you haven't heard from in months. You think of your father's carpentry shop, of the village you left behind in 1914. "I go home," you finally say. "And after that? I don't know." Heinrich nods. That is all any of you can say. As December snow begins to fall, the column thins. Men leave in ones and twos, disappearing down side roads that lead to villages they haven't seen in years. Each farewell is brief, handshakes, claps on the back, muttered good lucks. No one has the energy for grand speeches. You're down to just a handful by the time you see the familiar hills of Bavaria rising on the horizon. Your heart pounds faster than it ever did in battle as you approach your village. What will you find? Will your parents be alive? Will Maria still wait for you? The houses look smaller, older. The church steeple stands where it always has, defiant against time. For a moment, you pause at the edge of the road, afraid of what the truth might be. Then the door opens, and standing there is your mother, older, thinner, but alive. She covers her mouth with her hands, tears running down her cheeks. She says your name as if it is both a question and a miracle. Behind her, your father steps into the doorway, stooped but smiling. "You're home," he says simply. His voice trembles with emotion. You drop your pack, your rifle, everything, and step forward into their arms. For the first time in years, the war feels far away. Not gone, never gone, but behind you. The nightmare has ended. You are home. The first night back under your parents' roof feels unreal. The kitchen table, worn smooth from decades of family meals, stands exactly where it always did. The smell of bread, thin and coarse but bread nonetheless, fills the room. You sit in your old chair, hands on the wood, as if touching it will prove you're really here. Your mother fusses over you, her eyes never leaving your face, as if she fears you might vanish if she looks away. Your father sits quietly, studying you, seeing both the son he raised and the soldier who has returned in his place. Later, in the small bedroom where you slept as a boy, you lie awake staring at the ceiling beams. They creak in the wind just as you remember, but your body won't relax. Every sound outside, dogs barking, carts rumbling, snaps you awake, your mind racing with trench reflexes. At one point, you roll to your side and almost reach for a rifle that isn't there. Sleep comes in snatches, broken by dreams of shells and gas, until dawn creeps gray and cold through the shutters. The days that follow bring both joy and grief. You learn what the war has taken from your family. One brother killed at Verdun, another missing on the Eastern Front, his fate uncertain but grim. Only one returned, wounded and living in Munich with a new wife. Your parents' faces bear the weight of that loss, etched deep in lines of sorrow. Yet they cling to you fiercely, as if by surviving you've redeemed some of what was lost. And then comes Maria. You hear she has returned with her family from Stuttgart, where they fled during the worst of the shortages. You walk to the village square on a sunny afternoon, nerves jangling more than they ever did under fire. And there she is, older, yes, her face thinner, her eyes harder, but unmistakably her. She stops when she sees you, her basket of vegetables slipping slightly from her grasp. For a long moment you both stand frozen, staring across 20 feet of cobblestones and 4 years of silence. Then she smiles, small, hesitant, but real. You walk toward her, each step both terrifying and exhilarating. "I thought," you begin, but the words falter. She shakes her head. "I waited." That is all she says, but it is enough. The reunion is not a fairy tale. Too much has changed. You are both careful, tentative, as if afraid to discover how deep the scars run. When she asks about the war, you answer with half-truths. About comrades, about long marches, about cold nights. But you leave out the worst. The choking gas, the rats feeding on corpses, the screams that still echo in your ears. Some things can't be spoken. Some things you wouldn't want her to carry. Life in the village resumes its old rhythms, but the shadows of war linger everywhere. Empty chairs at dinner tables. Black armbands worn by widows. Children quieter than they should be, missing fathers they'll never know. You feel it in every conversation, every look, loss woven into the fabric of daily life. Work comes slowly. Your father's carpentry shop struggles. Wood is scarce, customers poorer than before. You lend your hands, but your skills feel clumsy, your fingers more used to rifles than chisels. Still, the routine helps. Sawdust on your hands is easier to live with than blood. At night, the dreams return. Sometimes you see Heinrich limping through the mud beside you. Sometimes Schmidt's pale face in the flare light. Sometimes it's strangers, the countless men you killed but never knew. You wake drenched in sweat, heart pounding, reaching again for a weapon that isn't there. Maria doesn't press when you avoid explaining. She simply holds your hand until your breathing slows. The news from beyond the village grows darker. In Berlin, revolution simmers. Soldiers mutiny, workers strike, radicals clash with nationalists in the streets. The Kaiser has fled to Holland. A republic has been declared. But these are words in a newspaper, distant from the small house where you eat thin soup with your parents, where Maria's smile offers a fragile reminder of normal life. One evening you sit with other veterans in the tavern. The air is thick with smoke and silence. No one speaks of glory anymore. Instead, you drink quietly, each man trapped in his own memories. Occasionally someone breaks the silence with a bitter laugh or a muttered curse about Versailles and reparations. But mostly you just sit, the unspoken bond of survival stronger than words. It is here, in this fragile peace, that you realize something. The war will never truly leave you. It will live in your dreams, in your reflexes, in the empty chairs that surround you. But it has also left you with something else. The knowledge that you endured, that you returned, that you have the chance, however fragile, to build again. As spring approaches, Maria stands with you outside your parents' home, the fields greening once more. "We can still make a life," she says softly. You look at her, at the resilience in her eyes, and you nod. The past is heavy, but the future, however uncertain, is still yours to claim. The first weeks back blur together in a strange mixture of routine and dislocation. On the surface, life resembles the world you left behind in 1914. The fields still need planting. The church bells still toll on Sundays. Children run along the dirt roads, their laughter carrying in the evening air. But beneath it all, the war has carved deep scars, visible and invisible, that no one can ignore. For you, the adjustment is harder than you expected. Civilian rhythms feel alien after 4 years of living by the tick of military orders. You wake at dawn without an alarm, expecting roll call. When you hear the church clock strike, your body tenses as though waiting for commands. Even in the quiet of the countryside, you listen for sounds of danger. Distant artillery that will never come, the metallic stutter of machine guns that are now only memories. The carpentry shop becomes both a burden and a refuge. Your father, older and weakened by years of strain, welcomes your help, though he struggles to hide the worry in his eyes. Wood is scarce, customers are poorer than before, and every nail, every board feels precious. At first your hands, more familiar with rifle stocks and bayonets, fumble with the tools. But slowly, as weeks turn to months, the old motions return. The scrape of a plane over timber, the careful strike of a mallet. These sounds ground you, anchor you in something older and steadier than war. Still, there are moments when the past crashes in. The smell of burning wood reminds you of villages torched in Belgium. The sharp crack of a hammer echoes like gunfire, sending your pulse racing. You try to hide it, to shake it off, but your parents notice, and Maria notices most of all. She doesn't ask for explanations you can't give. Instead, she quietly places a hand on your shoulder, steadying you, reminding you that you are no longer on a battlefield. The village has changed too. Some men return broken in body, missing arms, legs, eyes. Others don't return at all, leaving widows and blackened children with hollow stares. At the tavern, the veterans gather, but not to boast or share stories. They sit in silence, drinking slowly, united by experiences too heavy for words. You join them sometimes, not for company but for understanding. In their eyes, you see the same haunted look that you catch in your reflection. Conversations with civilians are harder. Neighbors ask casual questions. Was it terrible? Did you see Paris? Did you kill anyone? You answer with practiced half-truths, smiling when expected, but inside you feel the wall between you and them grow higher. They cannot understand, not really, and you cannot explain. Letters begin to arrive more regularly now that the censors are gone. News trickles in of politics shifting, of revolution in Berlin, of the Kaiser gone and a republic rising in his place. But in your small village, life is measured not by speeches or treaties but by harvests, by whether bread can be stretched through the week, by how many candles can be spared for the church. Maria becomes your anchor. You walk together in the evenings, past the fields turning green again, past houses patched with whatever materials could be found. She tells you about her years in Stuttgart, about the hunger, the ration lines, the fear when letters stop coming. She doesn't ask for the details of your 4 years, and you don't force them into the light. Instead, you talk about the future, quietly, tentatively, as though afraid it might shatter if spoken too loudly. At night, the nightmares come. Some nights you thrash in your sleep, choking on phantom gas, heart racing as if the walls around you are collapsing. Other nights you dream of the long marches, of Heinrich's limp, of comrades who will never return. You wake drenched in sweat, staring into the darkness, listening for shells that never come. Sometimes Maria wakes with you, whispering that you are safe, grounding you with her presence. Other times you sit alone until dawn, staring at your calloused hands, wondering if they will ever feel clean again. Slowly, though, life begins to stitch itself back together. Your father trusts you with larger tasks at the workshop. Customers return, grateful for sturdy tables and repaired doors. Maria helps your mother in the garden, laughter occasionally breaking the silence of the yard. You begin to feel a fragile sense of normalcy, though it is a new kind of normal, one built atop the ruins of the old. One evening, sitting by the hearth, Maria looks at you and says softly, "You're here now. That's what matters." You nod, though part of you still lives in the trenches, in the mud and fire of the Western Front. Perhaps that part will never leave. But maybe, just maybe, that doesn't mean you can't build something new. As spring turns to summer, you realize the war is no longer the only rhythm of your days. The sound of tools in the workshop, of Maria's laughter, of church bells on Sunday, these are beginning to take its place. You are not whole. You may never be. But you are alive, and for now that is enough. The months after your return pass with fragile steadiness. You measure time in days of carpentry and evenings with Maria, in harvests and changing seasons, in the small triumph of bread that tastes faintly of wheat instead of sawdust. But the world beyond the village is shifting, and soon even your quiet corner of Bavaria cannot escape the weight of politics. Newspapers arrive more frequently now, brought by traders who make their rounds. Each headline carries fresh uncertainty. The Kaiser, once spoken of with reverence, is gone, living in exile in Holland. Berlin is in turmoil, its streets filled with protests, gunfire, and competing visions of Germany's future. Some hail the new Weimar Republic as a chance for democracy. Others call it weak, a betrayal of the empire you fought to defend. In the tavern, arguments flare between veterans, some clinging to the past, others desperate for change. You listen in silence, your own thoughts conflicted. The word on everyone's lips is Versailles. In France, the victors are gathering to dictate the terms of peace. Rumors drift in like bitter smoke. Reparations that will bleed Germany dry. Loss of territory, of colonies, of pride. Restrictions on the army itself. Worst of all, a clause that places sole blame for the war on Germany, as though the millions who marched from every corner of Europe had nothing to do with it. Your father reads aloud from the newspaper by lamplight. They call it the War Guilt Clause, he mutters, voice heavy with disbelief. They mean to humiliate us, not just defeat us. He shakes his head, the lines in his face deepening. This will not bring peace. This will plant the seeds of something worse. You don't disagree, but you also don't argue. To you, the war feels too large, too vast to be reduced to clauses on paper. You saw the French die in the mud as you did. You saw British soldiers frozen in fear across no man's land. You saw hunger in every army, grief in every camp. To lay all of that at Germany's feet feels absurd, yet what power do you have to change it? You are a carpenter now, not a general, not a statesman. Still, the consequences reach you. Prices rise faster than wages. Coins that once bought bread now buy only scraps. Customers at the workshop bring small repairs instead of new commissions. You accept payment in potatoes and eggs and favors. Your father's face grows more tired with each passing week. We're being strangled, he says one evening, rubbing his hands together as if trying to warm them from a cold deeper than winter. In the village square, political pamphlets appear, posted overnight by unseen hands. Some demand loyalty to the Republic. Others scream of betrayal, calling its leaders November criminals for signing the armistice. Red flags fly in some towns, black-white-red imperial banners in others. Germany feels less like a nation and more like a battlefield waiting to erupt again. At the tavern, the veterans argue louder. One insists that only a strong army can restore dignity. Another claims socialism is the answer, that the workers who bore the war's burden should now shape its peace. You sit between them, silent, drinking slowly. To you, both arguments sound hollow compared to the simple truth. You survived, and millions did not. Maria sees the heaviness in your eyes. One night, as you walk the fields together under a pale moon, she stops and takes your hand. "Don't let them drag you back into it," she says firmly. "We've paid enough. We've lost enough." Her voice trembles, but her gaze is steady. You squeeze her hand, grateful. She knows you too well. The pull of comradeship, of pride, of unfinished battles, still lingers in your chest. But her words remind you that you have something worth holding on to now, a future, fragile though it may be. When the Treaty of Versailles is finally signed in June 1919, the reaction is like a wound reopened. Bells do not ring. People do not celebrate. Instead, anger and despair sweep through the village like wildfire. Men curse in the tavern, women weep at the thought of more hunger, more humiliation. "It's a death sentence," someone mutters. And in that moment, you see it clearly. Though the war has ended, the shadow it casts will stretch far into the future. That night, lying awake in your narrow bed, you realize the war will never truly leave you, or Germany. It lingers in your body, in your mind, and now in the very air you breathe. Versailles has not ended the conflict. It has only written the prologue to whatever comes next. Life after Versailles is hard, but it is also when you begin to build something of your own. The bitterness in the tavern, the arguments in the newspapers, the weight of defeat, those belong to the wider world. In the small village where you live, survival is more immediate. The soil must still be tilled. The roofs must still be mended. Families must still find ways to carry on. And within that rhythm, you and Maria find each other again. At first, your relationship is tentative. She has changed and so have you. The carefree girl who once laughed at the village dances is gone. In her place stands a woman who endured hunger, fear, and uncertainty for 4 years. You too are no longer the eager young soldier who marched off in 1914. But slowly, piece by piece, you learn how to bridge the gap between who you were and who you've become. You spend evenings walking the fields together, watching the sun sink behind the hills. Maria speaks of her years in Stuttgart, ration lines that lasted all day, bread stretched with sawdust, nights spent wondering if you were alive. She shows you the necklace she wore the entire time, with your ring strung on a chain. "I thought maybe you wouldn't come back," she says softly, "but I couldn't take it off." You don't answer at first, your throat is too tight. Instead, you take her hand, and for the first time in years, you allow yourself to believe in something beyond survival. Work becomes another anchor. The carpentry shop, though struggling, keeps you busy. Villagers bring broken chairs, warped doors, tables splintered by years of neglect. At first, the jobs are small, barely enough to keep food on the table. But as time passes, your skill returns. The weight of the tools in your hands feels steadier, less foreign. Shavings curl under your knife, the smell of fresh wood filling the shop with a sense of renewal. It is not the roar of cannons or the crack of rifles. It is quieter, humbler, but far more human. By late summer, Maria begins speaking of marriage. Her voice is careful, as though testing the idea. You know it's what you want, but the hesitation in you comes from fear, not of her, but of yourself. Will you always carry the war too close to your heart? Will the nightmares you wake from in the middle of the night haunt her as well? One evening, as you sit by the hearth, you tell her, "I am not the same man you promised to marry." She looks at you steadily and replies, "I know. Neither am I. But we can be new people together." The wedding, when it comes, is small. No grand feast, no bands or fireworks, just family, a priest, and a simple meal afterward. Yet it feels more real than any celebration could. As Maria places the ring back on her finger, the one she has kept close all these years, you feel something lift inside you. Not joy, not yet. That may take time, but a quiet, determined hope. You and Maria move into a small house your father helps you build on the edge of the village. It is nothing grand, one main room, a kitchen, a loft for sleeping, but it is yours. Together, you patch the roof, whitewash the walls, and plant a small garden behind it. Each nail hammered, each seed planted feels like an act of defiance against the war that tried to take everything from you. At night, you sit together by the fire. Sometimes you talk of the future, of children, of a bigger shop, of better harvest. Sometimes you sit in silence, content simply to share warmth. The nightmares still come, but Maria's presence makes them easier to bear. She doesn't wake you with questions. She simply rests her hand in yours until your breathing steadies. Slowly, the sharp edges of memory dull, leaving something less jagged though never smooth. Outside, Germany lurches through chaos. Inflation worsens, politics fracture, newspapers rage. But in your small home, life has a different rhythm. You measure progress not by speeches in Berlin but by the growth of your garden, by the laughter that sometimes breaks from your throat when Maria teases you, by the steady strength of your own hands shaping wood again. One evening, as autumn leaves fall outside, Maria leans against your shoulder and whispers, "We survived, but now we must live." The words strike you deeply. Surviving was the war's demand. Living is yours to claim. And for the first time in years, you allow yourself to imagine that it might truly be possible. The first winter in your new home is cold but steady. The walls creak in the wind, the hearth smokes if the wood is damp, and the roof leaks in heavy rain. Yet for all its imperfections, the little house is a fortress of peace compared to the dugouts and trenches you once endured. Each night, when you lie beside Maria, the warmth of her body against yours reminds you that you have made it through the storm. But peace does not silence the past. The nightmares still return. Some nights you wake choking, convinced you smell chlorine gas seeping through the door. Other nights you hear the rattle of machine guns, the thunder of artillery, the screams of men you couldn't save. Maria wakes with you, sometimes holding you, sometimes simply watching, her hand on your chest until your breathing slows. She never presses for details. Perhaps she knows that some burdens, if spoken, only grow heavier. By day the world is less haunted. Your carpentry brings a rhythm to life, tables to sand, doors to mend, beams to shape. Slowly, the villagers begin to trust you again, not only as a soldier who returned but as a craftsman, someone who can build rather than destroy. Feels good to create. Every plank fitted into place is an act of quiet defiance against the chaos of war. Maria tends the garden, coaxing life from the soil. You help her when you can, though you still find solace more in the workshop than in the earth. The rows of beans and potatoes, the bright burst of flowers she plants by the door, all speak to her belief in renewal. Watching her work, you wonder how she found the strength to wait for you all those years. She laughs easily again, though there is a new depth in her eyes, a seriousness that lingers even in moments of joy. As spring turns, Maria tells you she is expecting a child. The news strikes you with a mixture of fear and wonder. For so long, your life has been about death, about survival against impossible odds. The idea that something new, something fragile and innocent, could emerge from that darkness feels almost unreal. You sit with her by the fire, your rough soldier's hands covering hers, and for the first time in years, you weep, not from grief but from the overwhelming weight of hope. The village reacts with cautious celebration. Life has been scarce, but children are always welcomed as signs that the future still exists. The older women bring advice, food when they can spare it, knitted clothes for the coming baby. The men slap your shoulder in the tavern, muttering that it's good to see life returning, though their own eyes still carry shadows. At night, you dream of the child. Sometimes the dreams are tender. You see small hands grasping yours, hear laughter in the garden. Other times, darker visions intrude. You see the child in uniform marching into another war. You wake from those dreams trembling, clutching Maria as if holding her tightly will keep the future at bay. The months pass quickly. Inflation worsens, coins lose value, bread grows more expensive. You barter more often, trading carpentry for food. Maria works harder than ever, determined to keep the household steady. Together you scrape through each day an act of persistence. And then, on a bright summer morning, your child arrives. A son. The midwife places him in Maria's arms, his cries sharp and alive. You sit beside her, stunned, staring at the tiny face, the tiny fists. He feels impossibly small, impossibly delicate, yet when you touch him, you sense a strength that fills you with awe. Holding him for the first time, you feel a shift inside you. The war still lives in your bones, but here is proof that life continues, that something new can grow from ruin. You whisper to him promises you're not sure you can keep, that you'll protect him, that you'll give him a better world than the one you inherited, that you'll make sure he never knows the mud of trenches or the stink of gas. That night, with Maria asleep beside you and the baby in a cradle you built yourself, you sit awake listening to his breathing. Outside, the world is still broken. Germany humiliated, politics unstable, hunger gnawing at every household. But in that moment, you understand something vital. Survival was not the end of your story. This fragile new beginning is. The months after your son's birth feel like walking a tightrope between despair and renewal. Outside your small home, Germany seems to unravel. Riots in the cities, food shortages, political factions tearing at each other. But inside, life moves to a different rhythm. The cry of your child in the night, the laughter of Maria as she soothes him, the smell of wood shavings and fresh bread in the morning. It is this duality that defines your days. Each time you step into the village square, you hear whispers of politics. Some praise the Republic, others curse it as weak. Leaflets appear overnight calling for strikes, for revolution, for vengeance. In the tavern, men argue until their faces turn red, about Versailles, about reparations, about whether Germany was betrayed or simply beaten. You sip your beer in silence, feeling the weight of their words but unwilling to carry more battles. Yet when you return home, the noise fades. The creak of your workshop door, the sound of Maria humming as she kneads dough, the soft cooing of your son. These are the anchors that keep you steady. You've spent too long listening to the thunder of guns. Now you choose to listen to life instead. Still, the shadows creep in. Inflation worsens. A loaf of bread costs more each week, coins losing value faster than you can earn them. Customers at the shop bring less money, sometimes only bartering with eggs or potatoes. You accept whatever they can spare, grateful for anything that keeps your family fed. Maria worries aloud, but you remind her that you've survived worse. Mud, rats, and gas were harsher than empty pockets. Yet inside, you feel the same unease that everyone does, that the country is unraveling faster than it can mend. One evening, Heinrich visits. His limp is worse, his face thinner, but his spirit burns with restless anger. They humiliate us, and our leaders let it happen, he mutters, slamming his fist on your table. This republic is a joke. We need strength again, pride again. You listen, torn. Part of you understands his fury. You felt it yourself when you first heard the terms of Versailles. But another part recoils at the thought of more war. We've bled enough, you tell him. Strength isn't always in fighting. Heinrich shakes his head, unconvinced. When he leaves, you fear he'll find solace in one of the new groups forming in the cities, men who wear old uniforms and speak of revenge. At night, your son stirs and you rock him back to sleep. In the dim light, you study his face, the tiny features so fragile, so alive. You wonder what kind of Germany he will grow up in. Will he know peace? Or will the same drums of war that haunted your youth beat for him too? The thought chills you. You whisper to him promises, not of glory or honor, but of protection and love. Maria becomes your guide in these moments. She grounds you when the past presses too heavily, when you find yourself staring into the fire lost in memories. He needs a father, not a soldier, she says gently, placing your son into your arms. You hold him awkwardly at first. Your hands built for rifles and saws feel clumsy with such delicacy, but soon you learn the rhythm of his breathing, the weight of him asleep against your chest. It is a different kind of duty, but one you take on with quiet determination. The seasons turn. Your garden grows, modest but steady. The workshop begins to find its footing again as people tire of repairing and start daring to rebuild. You craft sturdy tables, cabinets, doors for homes that need more than patchwork. Each finished piece feels like proof that life can continue, that creation can outlast destruction. And yet, you never truly escape the war. It lingers in your dreams, in the way you scan every street for exits, in the reflexive flinch when a cart wheel cracks too sharply. But now, those shadows are balanced by new light. The laughter of your son learning to crawl, the warmth of Maria's hand in yours, the knowledge that you are not alone in facing what comes next. Germany is broken, yes, but in your small home, you have found a fragile peace. It is not grand or certain. It could be shattered by politics, by hunger, by forces far beyond your control. But for now, in the glow of your hearth, with Maria's head resting on your shoulder and your child sleeping nearby, you feel something you thought you'd lost forever, the quiet possibility of a future. Peace, even fragile peace, cannot erase the past. It lingers inside you, stitched into your bones, surfacing at unexpected times. You can spend the day in your workshop, the smell of wood and the scrape of tools steadying your hands, but then a sudden noise, a hammer dropping, a wagon wheel cracking on a stone, sends your heart racing, your body tensing for cover. The nights are worse. Sleep comes, but dreams are not gentle. You see the trenches, endless and gray, stretching into mist. You hear the distant whistle of shells, the coughing of men choking on gas, the staccato chatter of machine guns. Sometimes the faces come back, Heinrich limping through mud, Schmidt pale in the moonlight, Muller crying out from no man's land. Other times it is strangers, men you shot but never knew, shadows that stare at you with hollow eyes. You wake drenched in sweat, Maria's voice soft in your ear, her hand steady on your chest. "You're home," she whispers. "It's over." But in your dreams it never is. The village understands in its own way. You are not alone in your scars. Other veterans carry the same haunted look, the same flinch at sudden sounds. You gather at the tavern sometimes, sitting in silence more than talking. When words do come, they are often bitter, circling around Versailles, around betrayal, around the idea that millions died for nothing. You rarely add to the conversation. You've learned that silence carries more truth than anger ever could. Your son grows, his laughter filling your small house with a music you never thought you'd hear again. He reaches for your tools in the workshop, babbles at Maria as she tends the garden. Sometimes you find yourself staring at him with an ache in your chest. He is life made new, untouched by the mud and fire you carry. But then the fear returns. What kind of Germany will he inherit? Will he one day be asked to march as you did, with promises of quick victories and glory that turned into years of horror? You vow silently that you will do everything in your power to protect him, though you know how powerless one man can be against the tides of history. One evening, Heinrich visits again. His anger has not softened. He speaks of rallies in the cities, of groups promising strength, order, revenge. "We can't let this stand," he says, eyes blazing. "They humiliate us while our children starve." You listen, but you do not answer. You know where that path leads. You've walked it already and you've seen where it ends, in mud and fire and graves. Heinrich slams his fist on the table, frustrated at your silence, then leaves. You watch him limp down the road, a man still fighting battles long since lost. Maria senses your turmoil. That night, as you sit by the fire staring into the flames, she says quietly, "You can't save the whole country, but you can save this house, this family. That has to be enough." Her words settle in you like stones sinking to the bottom of a river. Perhaps she is right. Perhaps the only war you can win now is the war against despair. Still, you find small ways to honor the past. Each year, on the anniversary of the armistice, you walk to the churchyard where a simple monument has been raised. Names are carved into the stone, brothers, neighbors, friends. You stand there in silence, remembering their laughter, their voices, the way they marched beside you. You don't pray, the war burned that out of you. But you remember, and in remembering, you give them something no treaty can take away. The years pass slowly, marked by harvests and the growing weight of your responsibilities. Your workshop expands little by little. You save enough to add another room to the house. Your son learns to walk, to talk, to ask endless questions. And though the nightmares never fully leave you, though the weight of memory presses heavy some days, there are moments, quiet evenings by the hearth, mornings when your son runs to greet you, Maria's hand slipping into yours, that make you believe peace, however fragile, is still worth fighting for. Because survival, you realize, is not the end of the story. Living, truly living, is. And though the shadows of the war may always follow you, they no longer define you entirely. You are more than a soldier. You are a husband, a father, a craftsman. And in those roles, perhaps you can build something the war could not destroy. A life that endures. The new decade begins not with celebration but with uncertainty. The war has ended, but its echoes rumble through every corner of Germany. For you, the 1920s arrive quietly in your small Bavarian village. Another cold winter, another spring planting, another year measured by the creak of tools and the laughter of your growing son. Yet outside your walls, the country twists and shudders under the weight of defeat. The first challenge is money. Inflation creeps in at first, then races like wildfire. Coins that once bought bread now buy nothing. Prices climb faster than wages. You finish a table for a customer, and by the time he pays you, the money is worth half of what it was when you agreed on the price. People begin carrying banknotes in sacks. Children play with stacks of marks as though they were blocks. Your father shakes his head in disbelief. "Wood is worth more than money now," he mutters. He's not wrong. Sometimes you're paid in potatoes or in a side of meat or in firewood. You accept it all. Survival doesn't care what currency is used. Maria grows thinner, though she insists she's fine. She makes meals stretch further than you thought possible. Soups watered down, bread mixed with whatever can be ground into flour. Your son doesn't notice the hunger, not yet. He laughs, he grows, he plays. but you and Maria feel it in your bones. Nights when your stomach aches, you remind yourself that it is still better than mud, rats, and the endless roar of the front. Yet a question haunts you: is this the peace you fought for? Politics swirl like storms. In the cities, workers strike, soldiers, veterans groups march, radicals clash in the streets. You hear about the Spartacist uprising, about Free Corps militias crushing it in blood, about communists and nationalists battling for control of Germany's future. In the tavern, men argue about it with fiery passion. Some swear by socialism, promising equality for workers. Others demand a return to the old empire or something even harsher, voices rising in anger. You sit quietly, listening, remembering the sound of promises before the war, promises that turned to death and ruin. And yet, hope glimmers in strange places. The Weimar Republic, fragile though it is, begins to take shape. In the larger towns, there are new freedoms, new expressions of art and culture. Newspapers talk of jazz music in Berlin, of women voting, of theaters filled with new plays. It feels like another world entirely, far from your quiet fields and workshop. Sometimes you wonder if you'll ever see it with your own eyes, or if you even want to. Heinrich visits less often, but when he does, his words are sharper. He speaks of betrayal, of leaders who stab the army in the back, of groups forming that will restore Germany's pride. You try to reason with him. We lost because we were exhausted, because the Allies had more, because war devours everyone, you say. But Heinrich shakes his head. No, we were betrayed at home. If we had been supported, we would have won. His limp makes him bitter, his anger keeps him alive, but you fear the path he walks. It is not toward peace. Meanwhile, your own family grows. In 1922, Maria gives birth to a daughter. She has her mother's eyes, serious and thoughtful, and from the first moment you hold her, you feel the same fierce love that overcame you with your son. 2 children now, both fragile and miraculous in their existence. The thought of them gives you purpose. Whatever storms Germany faces, you will shield them as best you can. But the storms are closer than you'd like. One summer, riots break out in Munich. Red flags, black-white red flags, gunfire in the streets. You hear the echoes even in your village, though no fighting reaches your door. Rumors spread, of men with fierce eyes and louder voices, of ex-soldiers forming into disciplined groups, of leaders who promise revenge and revival. Some villagers whisper their names with admiration. You keep silent, unwilling to fuel the fire. Through it all, your workshop becomes a sanctuary. Sawdust, wood, the slow rhythm of creation. These are things you can control when the world beyond your walls feels impossible. Maria holds the family together with quiet determination, raising the children with patience and warmth. In their laughter, in the way your daughter clings to your hand, you find small lights piercing the gloom. Still, the weight of memory presses on you. At night, the nightmares remain. But when you wake in the darkness, listening to your children breathe, you realize something important. The war shaped you, but it did not end you. Each day you rise, you carve, you build, you love. And in that persistence, fragile though it may be, lies your quiet defiance against the chaos that threatens Germany. The 1920s are not easy, but they are life. And for now, that is enough. The mid-1920s arrive like a tide that cannot decide whether to rise or fall. Some days there is hope, whispers that Germany may finally be stabilizing, that the worst chaos of inflation has passed, that normal life might be possible again. Other days, fear looms larger, reminding you how fragile that hope is. For you and Maria, life is measured in simpler terms. 2 children growing fast, a workshop that manages to scrape by, a household held together with patience and resilience. The garden thrives, and though meals are still meager, they are steady. Your son begins school, walking down the lane with a satchel too large for his small frame. You watch him go with pride and a pang of worry. What kind of world will he inherit? Will the classroom truly open a future for him, or will it only prepare him for struggles you can't yet see? Maria insists on focusing on the present. She fills the house with warmth, teaches the children songs, makes their clothes by hand. In her, you see a strength forged by hardship. She waited for you through war and hunger, and now she builds a family from the scraps left behind. When she laughs, truly laughs, you almost believe the world outside has healed. But outside your walls, Germany wavers. The government in Berlin struggles to keep balance, pulled by extremists on both sides. In the tavern, voices grow louder again. Men praising speeches they heard in Munich, names of new leaders whispered with admiration or contempt. Some of the veterans you once sat beside now march in rallies, wearing old uniforms, chanting about betrayal and vengeance. You avoid these conversations when you can, but Heinrich has chosen his side. He no longer visits as often, and when he does, his eyes burn with something harder, darker. "I've found men who speak the truth," he says one evening, his voice low but fierce. "They know who betrayed us. They'll bring Germany back." You try to reason with him, reminding him of the mud, the death, the endless futility of war. But Heinrich only shakes his head. This time will be different. You see then that he is lost to something larger than himself, a storm you cannot pull him from. Meanwhile, the economy lurches like a wounded animal. After years of wild inflation, a new currency brings some relief. Prices stabilize. People begin to breathe again, cautiously. For the first time in years, customers come to you asking not only for repairs but for new furniture. A dining table, a sturdy wardrobe. Your workshop hums with activity, and with each project you feel the old pride return. The pride of creation, not destruction. Maria's eyes shine when she sees your work, and the children delight in hiding under the tables before they are delivered. It feels like progress, however small. Yet even in progress, shadows creep. News travels of France occupying the Ruhr, of clashes between German workers and foreign soldiers, of strikes and reprisals. In the village, farmers grumble about taxes, about debts they cannot pay. Every headline, every rumor feels like a reminder that peace is a fragile illusion, one that could shatter at any moment. At night, when the children sleep, you sit with Maria by the fire. She speaks of the future, how one day the children might inherit the workshop, how perhaps your daughter could become a teacher, your son a craftsman like you. You nod, listening, wanting to believe. But sometimes you see beyond the firelight, back to the trenches, to the war that shaped you. The fear lingers that history may not be finished with you, or with them. One spring afternoon, your son asks you a question that stills you. "Papa, were you brave in the war?" He looks at you with wide eyes, innocent, expecting a simple answer. You think of the nights trembling in dugouts, of running through shellfire with your heart hammering in terror. You could lie, but you don't. "I was afraid," you tell him. Everyone was. Being brave doesn't mean you weren't afraid. It means you did what you had to do, even when you were. He nods slowly, as if the words weigh heavily even on his young mind. You pray he never has to understand them fully. The 1920s march on. There are dances again in the village, festivals with music, children playing in the streets. Life insists on continuing, even amid uncertainty. You and Maria walk together on warm evenings, hand in hand, watching the children chase fireflies. For a moment, the world feels almost whole again. But deep inside, you know peace is not guaranteed. You've lived too much history to trust it blindly. Germany stands at a crossroads, fragile and fractured. And though you want to believe your children will inherit a brighter world, the shadows on the horizon remind you that hope and fear will walk together for many years yet. By the late 1920s, the fragile balance in Germany begins to crack again. For a brief moment, it seemed as though life might truly stabilize. Businesses recovering, children returning to schools, music and art flourishing in the cities. In your workshop, commissions came more steadily. You built tables for weddings, wardrobes for young couples starting new lives, cradles for newborns. The sound of the saw, the smell of wood, the laughter of your children, it all made you believe for a little while that the worst was behind you. But storms rarely vanish. They only wait. It begins with whispers of a new voice rising in Munich. A man with piercing eyes and a gift for speeches. A former soldier like you, though he speaks not with weariness of the trenches, but with fire, blaming the defeat on betrayal, on enemies within and without, promising to restore Germany's pride. At first, you dismiss it as noise. You've heard such promises before. You know where they lead. But the whispers grow louder. Pamphlets circulate even in your small village. Heinrich returns one evening, his step more purposeful than you've seen in years. You have to hear him, Heinrich insists, eyes alight. This man speaks for us. For veterans, for Germany. He'll undo Versailles. He'll make us strong again. You shake your head, feeling old anger stir. We don't need strength like that. We need peace, Heinrich. We've buried enough men. But Heinrich is unmoved. Peace is humiliation. Peace is poverty. This man offers more. You don't argue further. You see the fever in his eyes, The same fever you once carried into Belgium in 1914. You know it cannot be reasoned with. The years grind forward. In 1929, the world trembles as markets crash in America, and the shockwaves ripple across Germany. Businesses close. Banks fail. Your workshop loses commissions. Families who once bought furniture now beg for repairs instead. Hunger creeps back into your village, not as sharp as during the war, but gnawing and constant. And with hunger comes anger. People look for someone to blame, someone to follow. Your children grow through these years, their innocence shielding them from the worst. Your son, now a boy of school age, asks questions you struggle to answer. Why are people shouting in the square? Why are men marching with flags? You tell him simply, because they are afraid. But you do not tell him how fear can twist into fury, into hatred, into something far worse. Maria sees the worry etched on your face. You can't fight the world, love, she tells you one evening as you sit by the fire. All we can do is keep this house, keep this family safe. You nod, but your heart is heavy. You know safety is never guaranteed when the world turns restless. In the tavern, the arguments grow sharper. Once it was about the war, then about Versailles. Now it is about this new leader, this voice spreading from Munich to Berlin. Some call him dangerous, a fanatic. Others call him a savior. You sit in silence, watching men you've known for years slip into anger and certainty. You've seen where blind certainty leads. Graves. Silence. Yet the tide builds, unstoppable. The rallies grow larger. The flags more numerous. Even in your small village, young men march in step, chanting slogans with conviction that chills you. You feel history turning, another storm gathering on the horizon, and you wonder if Germany is doomed to repeat its mistakes forever. One evening, your son sits beside you as you carve a chair. "Papa," he asks softly, "will there be another war?" The question freezes you. You look at his face, still soft with childhood, and feel your chest tighten. You want to tell him no, that the world has learned its lesson, that men will not throw themselves into the abyss again. But you cannot lie. Not to him. "I don't know," you say finally. "But if there is, I hope you will never have to see it." The weight of memory presses down on you in that moment, heavier than ever. You think of the mud, the screams, the friends left behind. You think of Heinrich's fevered eyes, of the men marching in the square. You think of your son, your daughter, their futures balanced on the edge of history. The storm is rising again. And though you cannot stop it, you can feel it in your bones, the same way you once felt artillery rumbling miles away. A vibration in the earth, a tremor in the air. The second great catastrophe is coming. And this time it may take your children instead of you. By the 1930s, the storm that once seemed distant has arrived in full force. Germany is changing, streets filled with parades, flags draped from every window, speeches broadcast through radios that echo even in your quiet Bavarian village. The man Heinrich once urged you to listen to is no longer a voice in Munich but the leader of the nation. His promises of strength, of pride, of revenge against Versailles have carried him to power. And the people, weary of hunger and humiliation, follow him with fervor. At first, you try to shut it out. You bury yourself in your workshop, in the rhythm of saw and chisel, in the smell of fresh wood. Maria shields the children as best she can, keeping their world small, centered around the home and the village. But even here, far from Berlin, the change is undeniable. Old friends wear new uniforms, neighbors salute in the street. The children bring home lessons from school that make Maria's face tighten. Words about loyalty, about strength, about enemies. Heinrich visits again, now dressed in the brown shirt of the movement. He speaks with pride of Germany rising, of jobs returning, of order restored. His limp is still there, his bitterness unchanged, but now it has purpose. "You see," he says, slapping your shoulder. "He's giving us back what we lost." You look at him, and for a moment you feel the old bond of the trenches, the nights spent shivering together, the mud you both survived. But then you think of your children, of the lessons they are being taught, of the shouts you hear in the distance, and you know, this is not salvation. It is another road to ruin. And ruin comes. In 1939, war returns. Your son, now grown, is of age. You watch him pull on a uniform as you once did, his face pale but resolute. He doesn't carry the same blind optimism you had in 1914. He knows too well the cost. But he goes because what choice does he have? You embrace him fiercely, your voice breaking as you give him the only advice you can: keep your head down. Do what you need to survive. His eyes meet yours, understanding. Then he is gone, and history repeats itself in the cruelest way. The years that follow feel like watching an old nightmare play out on a larger stage. Victories at first, parades, cheering crowds, the sense of invincibility. Then the tide turns. Reports of Russia, of brutal winters, of men freezing and starving in a land too vast to conquer. Your son returns wounded, his leg shattered by frostbite and shrapnel. He survives, and for that you are grateful beyond words. But he carries the same haunted eyes you see in your own reflection, the same silence when asked what it was truly like. Your daughter marries, but her husband is killed in the bombings of Hamburg. She returns home with a child, a widow before she is truly grown. You hold her as she weeps, remembering your mother's face when you returned in 1918. The circle is complete. Another generation scarred, another family torn apart. In 1945, the war ends. Not with an armistice, not with a shaky peace, but with destruction so complete it leaves you breathless. Cities reduced to rubble, millions dead, Germany occupied, divided. The truth of what was done in the name of strength, the camps, the atrocities, emerges like a wound torn open. You sit in silence, unable to fathom how far your country has fallen. No one speaks of glory now. There is only shame and grief, and the endless question of how it came to this. Your son sits beside you one evening, his artificial leg propped against the wall. How do we rebuild from this? He asks, his voice hollow. You look at him, at the weight he carries, at the child who has seen too much, and you think of yourself in 1918 asking the same question. The same way we always do, you say softly, one day at a time. But this time we must be wiser. The years after the war bring a different kind of struggle. Germany is divided, east and west, a new frontier drawn across the land. Yet in the west, something begins to grow. An economic recovery, a fragile democracy, a slow rebuilding. You live quietly, tending your garden, your grandchildren playing in the yard. Maria's hair turns silver, her smile steady, her presence the constant thread through every storm. By the 1960s, you are an old man. A young historian visits, asking about the Great War, about what it was truly like. You consider his question, his notebook ready, his eager face waiting. How can you explain mud and fear and waiting? How can you explain the sound of shells, the stink of gas, the way the earth itself seemed to groan under the weight of death? Finally you say, it was mostly mud, and waiting, and being afraid but pretending you weren't. He writes it down, but you know he doesn't truly understand. How could he? In 1972, Maria passes peacefully in her sleep. You follow a few years later, your life having spanned empires, republics, dictatorships, and ruins. Your grandchildren inherit your medals, your helmet, your photographs. They ask questions, wide-eyed, and you wonder what stories they will tell of you. And so, your life, once a frightened young man marching off in 1914, ends as an old man in a world utterly transformed. The empire you defended is gone, the Kaiser a footnote, the battles buried under layers of history. What remains is not victory or defeat, but endurance. The ability to survive, to rebuild, to find love, to raise a family, to carve meaning from ruin. That, you realize in your final days, is the true lesson. Survival is not enough. To live, to build, to love. That is what outlasts the wars. And as you close your eyes one last time, you carry with you the simple truth you learned through it all. Life, no matter how scarred, is still worth living.